welcome to Potential Synergy. I am Toonie. Thank you for being here. This format is a little bit unusual, but I'm recovering from a cold and I don't feel like talking to the camera, so I'm going the voiceover route. In case you haven't noticed already, we're making an apron in this video. It's going to be a sew-along of the Sam Apron pattern by Helen's Closet Patterns. So before I make a fool of myself even more, let's get started. First of all, the Sam Apron comes in two views. View A is a crossback apron and view B is a halter neck apron. I prefer view B, so that's what we're going to be making in this video. However, if you need help with view A, I will link to a video tutorial that I found on YouTube for that view in the description box. Now let's talk about some of the main features of this apron. This apron comes in different sizes for different widths and different heights. Just to give you a reference point, I am about 5 feet 3 inches tall and my hip size is around 39 to 40 inches. This apron I'm wearing is in sizes 14 to 20. Based on the size chart in the pattern, this size range, 14 to 20, it's a little bit big for my hip size. I made this apron for someone else, but I just wanted to put it on and show you how it fits on my body. As you can see, even when your size is a little bit off, it still fits okay. So don't let the different sizes scare you. So now I'm showing you the pockets on the apron. We have one chest pocket and one waist pocket. You can divide the pockets into smaller pockets. You can have a pen pocket, a pocket for your phone, stuff like that. Also, on each side of your waist pocket, you can add a towel loop. It's highly customizable. The pattern instructions will walk you through some options that you can try or you can come up with your own. I wanted to point out an adjustment that I made to the neck strap. I wanted to make it adjustable, so I added a rectangle ring and a tri-glide, and I will show you how I do that during the sewing process. I think that's pretty much it for view B. Now let's talk about how you can get this pattern. To get this pattern, you're going to go to helensclosetpatterns.com and click shop. You can get this pattern for free when you subscribe to their newsletters. So once you get to the pattern page, you're going to scroll down and click on Get the Sam Apron. Scroll down to find information regarding fabric recommendations, yardage, etc. Once you click on Get the Sam Apron, it's going to ask for your email address. After you put in your email address, they're going to send you the pattern along with the sewing instructions. These are some of the supplies for this project. I'm using my cutting mat, my clear quilting ruler, my rotary cutter, my fabric scissors. I'm also using a small pair of scissors as a thread snip. You're going to need something to mark your fabric. I am using my charcoal pencil from Clover. You can also use a friction pen or chalk, whatever you prefer. Next, let's talk about thread. I am using Gutermann Mara 100 R-PET thread. It's a polyester thread and supposedly made from recycled water bottles. I am using two colors today, gold and green. The green thread is going to be my coordinating thread. However, to help you see what I'm stitching better, I'm going to be brave and use gold thread for the majority of this project. Next, let's talk needles. I am using Microtex needles. Most of the time I'll be using a 90/14 needle, but if a seam gets really bulky and I feel like I need to switch needles, I will use a 100/16 needle. Just having it on hand is helpful. The next items are going to be optional, but I'm going to make an adjustable neck strap, so I'm going to need some hardware. I'm using one tri-glide and one rectangle ring, and both of them are 1.5 inch wide. The pattern suggests using D-rings for this, but I'm trying something different today. Once again, you don't need these two items unless you're going to make an adjustable neck strap. Finally, I would like to talk about the pressure feet that I'm going to be using for this project. The first one is the default foot that comes right on your machine. This is my zigzag foot, and I'm going to be using this for bar tacking and for some stitching. Next, I'm going to use my zipper foot, and this foot should come with most modern sewing machines. So I'm going to be using this foot for when I need to sew really close to an edge, especially during the final assembly phase. The last presser foot is actually the star of the show. It's my stitch in the ditch foot. You might or might not have this foot. If you don't, that's okay. But if you do, now it's time to get it out, because it's going to be really helpful with all the top stitching that we're going to do in this project, and there's a lot of it. It comes with a guide in the middle, and when you move the needle to the left or to the right of the guide, it gives you a consistent line of stitching. In addition to these tools, of course, you're going to need your typical sewing notions like your pins, wonder clips, iron, etc. And of course, I forgot the most important tool right here. It's this little thing called a hump jumper or a jig. This thing has a couple different names, but anyway, the purpose of this tool is to help your sewing machine sew over uneven areas. I'm sure we've come across times when our sewing machines sewed from a thick area to a thin area, and then we ended up with a skip stitch, and we don't want that for this project. This tool is going to really help you keep that even, consistent stitch length. If you don't have this tool, don't worry. You can use some scrap fabric and just fold it up to the same thickness as the area you're sewing. My hump jumper has two sides. One side is slightly thicker than the other. For the Sam Apron, the pattern suggests medium to heavyweight woven fabrics with no stretch. I am using 10-ounce cotton canvas for my apron. I like this fabric because, first of all, it's an economical choice. It's not super thick that it's difficult to sew, but is not see-through. I would recommend pre-washing your fabric before cutting the pieces out. I can't speak for other fabrics, but I know that cotton canvas tends to shrink quite a bit, so I pre-washed mine before I cut my pieces out. Another thing about cotton canvas is that it doesn't seem to have a right or a wrong side. You will see that I marked my quote-unquote wrong side with an X, but you don't have to. You're going to need your two bias strips. Just in case you're new to sewing, please make sure that you have cut these two pieces on the bias. And if you're not sure what that means, please check out the pattern instructions on page 8. Alright, now that you have these two pieces, you're going to fold them and press them wrong sides together in half lengthwise. So I marked my wrong side with an X, as you can see here, and I'm going to go to my ironing board and press. Now that I have pressed my bias strips, I'm going to pin them to the right side of the curved apron bib. Your bias strips might be slightly longer than your curved edges on your apron. That's okay. We can trim the excess later. Please make sure that the raw edges of your bias strips match up with the curved edge of your bib. Before you sew the bias strips to the bib, you're going to mark 1.5 inches from the top and then 1 inch from each side, because we're going to start sewing 1.5 inches from the top of the bib, and then we're going to continue sewing until we get to 1 inch, and we'll stop sewing there. I went ahead and sewed that seam for you, so hopefully you can see what I did there. Now you have some excess fabric left on your bias strip, so you're just going to trim them. And then you're also going to grade the seams. So if you don't know what grading seams means, again, please check out the pattern instructions. This is going to be on page 9. I'm doing something a little bit different from what the pattern suggests. So instead of trimming one seam down to 1/8 of an inch, 1 to 1/4 of an inch, I'm going to trim both edges of each of my bias strips to 1/4 of an inch because I'm lazy. And just remember, you're not trimming the bib at all. You're only trimming the bias strips here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, and I'll see you in a bit. Now that your bias strips are trimmed and ready to go, you're going to go to your ironing board and press the bias strips and the seam allowances away from the bib. So I'm demonstrating here. I hope you can see the seam allowances will go away from the apron. So the bias strips will lay on top of the seams, if that makes sense. Once the seams are pressed, you're going to go to your sewing machine and understitch the bias strips to the seam allowances with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm using my stitch in the ditch foot here because I want to keep my stitch line relatively straight, but you don't have to. And because I have a couple of layers of fabric here, I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to 3.4 millimeters. I am adjusting the needle position on my machine so that where the needle is sewing is approximately 1/8 of an inch away from the guide on my presser foot. I'm not going to remind you every time, but please backstitch at the beginning and at the end of each seam. Next step, we're going to press the bias strips towards the wrong side of the apron. You can see the right side of my apron here. I'm going to go to my ironing board and flip the bias strips to the wrong side and then press. After I've done that, I'm going to go to my sewing machine and top stitch the seams with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. The pattern suggests sewing with the wrong side of the apron facing up so you can see what you're doing. At this step, I've got 2 stitch lines on each side of my bib on the wrong side, and when I flip to the right side, there's 1 stitch line on each bib curve. Now we're going to move on to hemming. Find a hem of the apron, and you're going to go to your ironing board and press the hem towards the wrong side, first 1/4 of an inch and then 1 1/2 inches. And then we're going to top stitch that. The bib part is almost done. Next, I'm going to press the sides of my apron 1/2 inch in to the wrong side and then another 1/2 inch in. So this is going to cover my raw edges. Also, at this point, the end of the bias tape should be covered by the folded sides of the apron as well. Once the seams are pressed, I'm going to go to my sewing machine and top stitch. During this seam, I'm going to introduce you to my best friend, the hump jumper, because we're starting at the hem here, and as you can see, the beginning of that seam is a little bit thick with all the layers, and if you see my presser foot here, it's not leveled, and that's not good. I can get skip stitches from that, so I'm going to grab my hump jumper and put it behind where I'm going to sew to make sure that my presser foot is leveled. And that's going to eliminate skip stitches. Like I said before, if you don't have a hump jumper, you can always use scrap fabric and just fold it up to the same thickness as what you're sewing. And please go slowly. set the bib aside and get out our chest pocket piece. Grab your chest pocket piece. You're going to press the top edge of the chest pocket towards the wrong side, first a 1/4 inch and then 1 inch. Once it's pressed, you're going to go to your sewing machine and top stitch. Now, there are multiple ways to make a patch pocket. My way is a little bit different from what the pattern instructions suggest. I'm going to start by drawing 3 lines, 1/2 inch from the left side, the right side, and the bottom of the chest pocket on the wrong side. At this point, you can go ahead and press the bottom and sides of the pocket towards the wrong side, 1/2 inch. I'm going to do something a little bit extra because I think it gives a nice finish to the pocket. I'm going to go to one of my bottom corners and then make a little triangle. I want to make sure that the base of my triangle lines up with where the 2 straight lines intersect. You can draw a diagonal line on each side to give you a guide, but you don't have to. Having an iron nearby, it's also very helpful. You can just fold your triangles up and then press. Once you have pressed your triangles, you're just going to go ahead and press the bottom and sides of the pocket towards the wrong side, 1/2 inch, as the pattern suggests. I have gone ahead and pressed my chest pocket. Hopefully this will clear up any confusion that you had before. If you're still confused, please check out a link that I put in the description box for a wonderful video tutorial on how to accomplish this technique. It's very easy to do once you get the hang of it. Next, grab your bib, put it right side up, and now you're going to grab your chest pocket. So with the wrong side of the pocket facing the right side of your bib, you're going to pin the chest pocket to the middle of the apron, about 4 inches from the top of the apron or where you think will look best. Please keep in mind that the top of the apron will be folded over 1.5 inches later. I folded my bib in half and then I went to my ironing board and pressed so I would get a line to mark the middle of my apron. Just like that. To be extra precise, I'm going to mark that middle line with my charcoal pencil as well, because sometimes I am a perfectionist and other times I just don't care. Now I'm going to mark 4 inches from the top of the bib. So I'm using my clear quilting ruler and I find 4 inches. I make sure that that line lines up with the top of my bib and then I mark 4 inches down from that. So now I know where to place the top of my chest pocket. Now I'm going to mark the middle of my chest pocket. Similar to the bib, I'm just going to fold it in half. I'm not even going to go to the ironing board. I'm just going to finger press it and make sure that the middle line of my pocket lines up with the middle line on the bib. I feel like I'm making this more complicated than it should be, but anyway, just in case you're very detailed like I am sometimes, I hope this is helpful. Okay, grab your pins. We're gonna pin the chest pocket to the bib. Next, I'm just gonna go to my sewing machine and show you how I sew the chest pocket to the bib. I'm still using my stitch in the ditch foot, and I'm starting from the top right corner of the chest pocket from my point of view. So imagine if you're wearing it, it's gonna be on the left. Honestly, it doesn't matter where you start. Just start at one of the top corners and you'll be fine. My first line is gonna be 1/8 of an inch from the edges around the sides and the bottom of the pocket. Once again, I am using my hump jumper to help my presser foot stay leveled at the beginning of the seam there. And I consider this top stitching, so I set my stitch length to 3.4 millimeters. Once I get to the other top corner of my chest pocket, I'm gonna sew 3/8 of an inch in from the edge. I'm being approximate here, so I'm just using 2 or 3 stitches. And then I'm going to pivot again and sew a second line of stitching around the pocket, 1/4 inch away from the first line. up where I started, and I'm just gonna pivot again and connect the second line to the first line with a little perpendicular line, just 2 stitches, and then go back and sew a few stitches on the first line just to secure it, and then backstitch. This technique helps prevent your pocket from coming apart from your bib. However, if you prefer one line of stitching around the pocket, that's fine too. Now is the part where you get to customize your chest pocket. You can leave it like this with one big pocket, or you can mark the pocket dividing lines. I'm going to follow the pattern instructions and mark 4 inches from one side of the pocket, and then divide the remaining space into 2 pockets of equal width. Now I'm just going to go to my sewing machine and sew those 2 lines. To secure the pocket openings, I'm going to sew a vertical bar tag at the top of all the pocket dividing lines, and I'm going to sew a horizontal bar tag in the top corners of the pocket. I also marked where I would stitch the bar tags on my pocket. Instead of bar tags, you can use rivets in the top corners of your pocket. My yellow apron has rivets all over the place if you want to see an example of how that looks. In case you've never sewn a bar tag stitch before, a bar tag stitch is basically a very tight zigzag stitch. So if you have a zigzag stitch option on your sewing machine, you can sew a bar tag. I honestly don't remember the stitch width and stitch length of my bar tags. I'm really sorry. My machine does have a bar tag option. I did make some adjustments to it though. It's best to try a stitch on a scrap piece of fabric before you move on to your real fabric. That way you can make appropriate adjustments. I have already done that off camera, so now I'm just gonna bar tag my pocket. And before I begin sewing, I secure my stitch with a knot on my machine. I have switched to my zigzag foot for this one. And remember, you're gonna sew horizontal bar tacks in the top corners of the pocket and vertical bar tacks at the top of the pocket dividing lines. Another tip to keep your presser foot leveled, especially the zigzag foot, your zigzag foot might come with a little spring on the back like mine does, the black thing over there. If you press it, hold it, and then put your presser foot down, it's gonna help keep your presser foot leveled. Of course, you can use your hump jumper for this purpose as well. You might notice that my machine is struggling to go over the first hump on that seam, so I'm using my hump jumper to help it a little bit. And once I get to the end, I'm going to tie another knot, and I have that button on my machine, but if you don't, you can always tie a knot on the wrong side of the fabric yourself. And there it is, my first bar tag. It doesn't look perfect, but if you use coordinating thread, it will be really hard to see, so you're fine. Now I'm gonna go ahead and finish my other bar tags on the chest pocket. Now grab your waist pocket piece. You're going to press the top edge of the waist pocket towards the wrong side first, a 1/4 inch, and then 1 inch. I'm marking the line where I'm going to fold. So the first line is going to be a 1/4 inch from the top of the pocket, and then the next line is going to be 1 inch below that first line. After I've done that, I'm going to go to my ironing board and press. I'm just showing you here what the waist pocket looks like after I press the top. So the first fold is going to be a 1/4 inch from the top, and then the second fold is going to be 1 inch. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine and top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the folded edge. Next, I'm I'm going to press the bottom and sides of my pocket towards the wrong side 1/2 inch. So I'm doing the same method that I did for the chest pocket. I'm drawing my 3 lines, and then I'm going to press my little triangles on the bottom corners, and finally I'm just going to fold the 3 edges to the wrong side. Once my pocket is pressed, it's going to look like this. I'm going to set it aside for a second. Now grab your bib. We're going to attach the waist pocket and the towel loops to the bib. First thing is you're going to determine the location of the waist pocket. So the pattern suggests going 7 to 9 inches below the bottom of the chest pocket in the middle of the bib. So I'm going to measure 7 inches from the bottom of my chest pocket and then mark a line perpendicular to the line that I pressed in the middle of the bib earlier. To clarify what I'm doing, my ruler is 6 inches wide, so I'm marking my first line at 6 inches, and then I measure 1 inch down from that line and mark another line. Now grab your waist pocket piece, find the middle line, match it up with the middle line of your bib. We're going to sew the pocket to the bib after we prep the towel loops. If you would like to add towel loops, you're going to grab the towel loop pieces, and then you're going to press the lengthwise edges of the towel loops towards the wrong side 1/4 inch. And then with the wrong sides together, you're going to press the towel loops in half lengthwise. Finally, you're going to top stitch the towel loops 1/8 inch from all the edges. Now I'm going to mark a line on each of my towel loops 1 inch from one side, and I'm going to go to my ironing board and press that end of my towel loop under. I recommend pressing the side with the back stitching under. Now you're going to tuck the unfolded edges of the towel loops into the sides of the waist pocket, just under the pocket top stitching. I'm in perfectionist mode, so I'm going to measure 1/4 inch from the line that I stitched on the pocket and mark it. And I'm going to line up the top edge of each of my towel loops with that marking. I'm also marking 1/2 inch in from my unfolded edges of my towel loops, so I know how much of the towel loops go under the pocket. Now that I've finished all my markings, I'm going to go ahead and pin the towel loops in place, making sure that they are straight. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine and sew around the sides and bottom of the waist pocket the same way I sewed the chest pocket to the bib. Just as a reminder, you're going to sew around the sides and the bottom of the pocket. You're going to start with 1/8 inch from the edges. Then you're going to pivot at the top corner and sew back 3/8 inch from the edge, and then keep sewing until you get to where you started. If you would like to divide the waist pocket into smaller pockets, you can go ahead and do that now. I'm going to divide mine into 3 equal width pockets. I'm going to start with measuring the width of my waist pocket. I've got about 18 inches, give or take. So I'm just going to measure 6 inches from each side of the pocket and then just draw 2 lines. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine and sew the 2 lines. And also I'm going to sew a vertical bar tag at the top of all the pocket dividing lines and a horizontal bar tag in the top corners of the pocket, just like what I did on the chest pocket. If you include towel loops on your apron, you're going to sew the folded edge of the towel loops to the apron. You're going to create an X with your stitching, and the pattern walks you through how to do that. If you're not sure, please refer to number 28 on page 17 for more information. I am measuring 1 inch in from the folded edge of one of my towel loops, and I'm drawing a line at 1 inch, and then I'm drawing an X between that line and the folded edge. I'm going to use these lines as a guide when I'm stitching my towel loops to my apron. Whenever I'm sewing a box stitch, which is this kind of stitching, I am using my zipper foot because I can get really close to the edges. But my zipper foot has a very small surface area, so sometimes fabric gets stuck. So I'm going to also use my hump jumper to keep my foot leveled. When it comes to straps for this apron, there are a couple of options. You can use pre-made webbing, and the length that you're going to cut depends on whether you're making view A or view B. If you're making your own straps and you're making view B, please follow along. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I am making an adjustable neck strap, so I am cutting one extra piece for the neck strap. And the measurements for the little piece are 2.5 inches wide by 6 inches long. This is one way to make the neck strap adjustable. There are many other ways to do it. If you're not making an adjustable neck strap, then don't worry about the little extra piece. Now grab your 3 strap pieces. You're going to press both lengthwise edges of the straps towards the wrong side 1/4 inch. Once you've done that, you're going to press the straps in half lengthwise, and then you're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from both lengthwise edges. If you're confused by my explanation, we're doing the same thing that we did to make the towel loops earlier. I've gone ahead and pressed all my 3 strap pieces, and this is how one of them looks. As you can see, once you open it up, you see the 1/4 inch that I folded in on each side of the strap. And then I folded the strap in half lengthwise. At this point, you're left with 2 raw edges on the short ends of each of your straps. I'm going to go ahead and finish one of the raw edges now. The pattern suggests you do this at the end, but I'm doing it a little bit differently, and I'm going to show you how I do it. Now grab one end of your strap, and then you're going to fold it right sides together, just the end, like I'm doing now. I'm going to mark the wrong side so you can see better. Okay, so now flip your strap so that the right sides are together like that. Keep the folded edges where they are. You don't have to unfold them or anything. And now I'm going to pin, and then I'm going to go to my sewing machine and sew. It doesn't really matter what your seam allowance is, but I usually use 1/2 inch. I'll see you at the sewing machine. I hope you can see my stitch line over there. I use coordinating thread for some reason. Now I'm just going to trim the seam allowance on each side diagonally, and then trim straight so it's about 1/4 inch. Now it's time to flip the strap so that the right sides are out, and I'm using my pokey thing, I don't remember what it's called, to poke the corner out. I really like this method because it gives my strap in a very clean look. Now I need to do the same thing on the other 2 straps, and then I'm going to go to my sewing machine and top stitch with 1/8 of an inch from the edges. step is optional, but if you're making an adjustable neck strap and you're doing it my way, you're going to grab your little extra piece of fabric that you cut out 2.5 inches by 6 inches. My piece is not quite 6 inches, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm measuring in 1.25 inches from one of the long edges. And then I'm going to mark a line. So that's going to be the middle of my fabric. Then I'm going to go to my ironing board and press each side towards that line. Once it's pressed, it's going to look like this. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine and top stitch 1/8 of an inch from each long side. Grab your bib. You're going to go to your ironing board and press the top bib edge towards the wrong side 1/4 inch first, and then another 1.25 inches. We're going to attach the neck strap to the bib. So now you're going to measure how long you want your neck strap to be. If you don't want to make it adjustable, you can just go ahead and measure the length. Also, remember to add 2.5 inches on either end for the seam allowance. I'm making mine adjustable, so I'm going to grab my little piece that I just assembled, and then I'm going to slide my rectangle ring inside, making sure that the wrong side of the fabric, the side with the raw edges, are hidden underneath, and then slide the strap under one side of the bib. And as you can see, the strap is now pointing downward, and the raw ends of the strap are tucked underneath the folded edge of the bib. Now I'm going to grab one of the straps and tuck it under the other side of the bib, making sure that the side that goes under is the side with the raw edge. If you just have one strap for the neck, you're just going to do the same thing. You just tuck one of your raw edges under one side of the bib and then the other one on the other side of the bib. Simple enough, right? Make sure your straps are pointing downwards. Now we're going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch from the inner folded edge of the bib. If you are making an adjustable neck strap, please follow along. Next, I'm going to insert my tri-glide to the neck strap. First, make sure your neck strap lies straight and not twisted, just like I'm doing here. And then insert the end of the neck strap under the top hole and then over the bottom hole, just like I'm doing now. Once again, make sure your neck strap is not twisted. Now grab the end of your neck strap and feed it through the rectangle ring from front to back. If you're looking at your apron from the right side, your neck strap should look like mine. Please pay attention to the next step because it's a little challenging to describe. Alright, so I grab my tri-glide and I pull my strap up to make some space. Then I insert the end of my strap into the top hole of the tri-glide. And then I make a loop and feed the end of the strap through the bottom hole. You want to feed around 1 to 2 inches at the end of your neck strap through it. And once you're done, just pull the neck strap like I did. And you're going to hold the end of your strap to the piece on the back and not the front, because we're going to attach that little end to the back side of the strap. But, very important, before you go ahead and attach anything to anything, please make sure that the neck strap is the length that you want. So I am adjusting my neck strap here to see if it's the length that I'm okay with. Right now it's really long, so if someone were to wear this apron right now, their bib would be probably on their belly. Another thing to consider is that some people are irritated by something like metal around their neck, so just try to gauge where you want the tri-glide to sit around your wearer's neck. For me, I like it to be on the opposite side of the rectangle ring. It does make the strap thicker with 2 layers on top of each other, but I'm okay with that. Okay, now
find the end of your strap. Depending on whether the end of your strap is finished, if it's finished, you can just leave out maybe an inch like I did here, and then hold it to the strap that's on the back side. Very important. I've made this mistake a couple of times before. I've attached the end of my strap to the wrong side and I wasn't able to adjust my strap. Like if you did it like this, you wouldn't be able to slide the tri-glide. So once again, we're gonna attach the end of the strap to the strap on the back. If the end of your strap is a raw edge, is not finished, you can just leave about 2 inches and then fold the end under like I did just now. You can go ahead and sew a box X stitch to secure the layers now. I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to use rivets and I'm going to show you how I do it in a moment. Now press your straps upward and then we're going to sew another line of top stitching 1/8 of an inch from the top of the apron and reinforce the straps either with box X stitches or bar tacks. I'm gonna use rivets on my strap, and this is the only place on my apron where I'm gonna use rivets. If you're not using rivets, you can sew a box X stitch just like the other ones that we just did earlier. Alternatively, if you're not as confident, you can just sew a couple of straight lines to secure the layers together. I love using rivets, and I just wanted to show you that this is an option that you can explore. If you would like to know more about rivets, I will link to a few videos that I find helpful in the description box. And here's our adjustable neck strap. Yay! Last step. You're gonna fold one end of the remaining 2 straps in 3/4 of an inch. Because I already finished one end of my straps, I'm gonna pick the end that has the raw edge. And I'm going to fold that in 3/4 of an inch. You can also press the folded edge and repeat for the other strap. Next, I'm going to pin the folded ends of the straps to the wrong side of the apron at the sides, just below the bias tape, and just in from the top stitched side seam. As I'm being a perfectionist here, I'm going to measure in 1 inch from the side seam and then mark it. Then I'm going to line up the folded edge of one of my straps to that line and pin. I'm going to stitch the apron strap onto the apron using a box X stitch, and I'm going to draw it first. This is probably TMI, but I want to cover that raw edge. That's why I marked that 1 inch from the side seam, is because I want my box X stitch to cover the raw edge on the strap as well. Now I'm going to prep the other strap and then go to my sewing machine and sew the box stitches, and I will be done. And that's my box X stitch. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and that's going to conclude the Sam apron. Woohoo! I hope you enjoyed sewing along with me. If I missed anything or if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments or ask Helen's Closet Patterns. Helen gave me permission to film this sew along, so thank you so much for trusting me. This is one of my favorite patterns, and I had such a blast making this video, as you can probably tell. Before I go, I just wanted to put the apron on and show you how it looks. I made this apron for my host dad, who is about 6 feet tall. So obviously it's a little bit long and there's quite a bit of room on the sides as well. But hopefully you can see how the pockets look and how the straps look. I strongly recommend this pattern to someone who would like to venture into the world of garment sewing, but you're not sure which pattern to start with. You're gonna learn a lot from sewing this apron. It's also a great choice for handmade gifts. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!